From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Nikesh Rughani for the BBC in Leicester. I actually only returned home yesterday from a week in Turkey. Not much cricket going on there, but it was baking hot. Unfortunately, though, I think I appear to have left the weather behind with me. It's cold, it's been drizzly since I got back into England, and I'm guessing it's a little bit warmer where my co-hosts are.
Jim Maxwell in Sydney, and it's winter here. We don't go freezing. It doesn't snow. It might get down into single figures occasionally, but today's been, for midwinter, pretty good. Sunny, 20 degrees. Can't complain.
Well, it's certainly warm where I am. Charu Sharma for Akashvani in Pondicherry once again. It's the final weekend. The Indian monsoon's beginning to disrupt the schedule a bit, but we're, like I said, into the final weekend, so the finish line is clear. Meanwhile, in England, where we have a lot of attention, the Indian women and men seem to be fighting very contrasting battles.
Charu, Jim, good to see you both again. Coming up on the show, we'll discuss the decision to award England the next 3 World Test Championship finals. But first, what's likely to be a pivotal 4th men's test between England and India is well underway in Manchester. Victory for the home side at Old Trafford would see them take an unassailable 3-1 lead in the 5-match series. India have named fast bowler Jasprit Bumrah in their team for the second test match in a row, his 3rd of the tour so far. Akashdeep misses the 4th test, though, after sustaining a groin injury in that Lord's test, while Nitish Kumar Reddy will miss the rest of the series through injury. Charu, lots to dissect there just with regards to India's team selection, but given the delicate nature of the series from India's point of view, how much pressure is there on Shubman Gill and his team in Manchester this week?
Well, on Shubman, personally, I don't think there's too much because he's done very well with the bat. I mentioned some time back that it was more important for him to, I suppose, build his reputation as a top-line, front-line batsman. But on the Indian team, collectively, enormous pressure. They've only won, 2 tests in the last 11? That's miserable for a team that counts itself as one of the best in the world. And I think that loss to New Zealand at home, being blanked, was the worst. And that started out a bit of a slide, a skid. And here they are, 1-2 behind. But I do think that the contests in England have been very fair. Who knows why they couldn't score 190 and a bit to win that 3rd test, or even allow England that big score in the final innings in the 2nd test for them to win. So they've had some narrow losses, if I can put it that way, and they really have shown that, at least batting-wise, they've done very well. But Bumrah's being in and out and a couple of the changes that are necessitated, it just doesn't look too settled, the Indian team. Maybe the spin's doing a little better than the pace right now. But yes, enormous pressure as a collective unit. And I think both on Gambhir and, to an extent, on Gill, there will be a fair amount of criticism going down continuously now for quite a few months, if they lose the series, that is.
Of course, and if at this stage. Now, before the tour, it was understood that Jasprit Bumrah, who many people consider to be the best all-format bowler in the world at the moment, would only play 3 out of the 5 tests, given all those injury concerns and workload management that has been talked about in recent times. Look, given this is the 3rd of those tests that he was scheduled to play, if it's 2-2 going to the Oval, Charu, are they really going to drop Jasprit Bumrah?
Well, interesting question, isn't it, Nikesh? On the face of it, he's not really showing any discomfort. It's not that he's limping along or whatever other, physical discomfort. So maybe there's some load management or perhaps, just avoiding the possibility of injury that's going on. But if they're 2-2, it's going to take a lot of heart to drop Bumrah. I think Bumrah can do himself a big favor in case India lose the 4th match. If they 1-3 down, then you say, well, there's no point playing me. But if they're 2-2, that's very interesting because I do think they'll take his opinion for sure and the medical officers. And then if at all possible, they will play him because winning in England at this point of time, we've just talked about how it's very important for India collectively. And if he can play a big role, they will certainly play him in the 4th test because this 3 out of 5 was only, to my mind, suggestive, just to avoid his breaking down because he has come back from a major back injury. But if they're 2-2, my guess is they will play him the 5th test.
I'm not a fan of all this chopping and changing. You pick your best team all the time, right? Who knows when someone's going to break down, unless they're carrying an injury into a game, obviously. But you pick your best bowlers. I don't understand the way the modern game operates in that regard. Okay, Australia's been fortunate with its three-star bowlers. They've kept up a pretty good level, consistent level of fitness. But don't forget they've also been rested from what I would call less important games like T20 and 50 over cricket when it's not a world championship. Pat Cummins, you watch the next few weeks, they're playing Pakistan in Australia. I think you'll find most of them are missing, as they are at the moment in the West Indies following that Test series. And that's the way you manage it. You keep your best bowlers ready for the games that, as I would say, and they would say, matter. And they are basically Test matches or World Championships, perhaps. So I think it's a management issue. I'd be playing Bumrah in the game at the Oval, whether they win, lose, or draw here. You've got the whole business of this World Championship of Test cricket. You've got to try and keep winning games. So you play your best team. Simple as that.
I agree. I mean, it's hard to disagree with you that you've got to play a best 11 every time that you're on the park, any format of the game. But it's not that India doesn't have a whole battery of, should we say, next line and third line bowlers as well. I think only Jasprit Bumrah, as we all know, has this rather unique action and therefore ability. But there's a whole battery there, I think as many as 10, perhaps a dozen, who can be replaced by any one of those dozens. So I don't think India should panic. I'm sure Australia is not panicking with those mid-30s bowlers because they've got so many others they can fit in all the time. And I really do feel that much as we elevate our stars, the best players in the 11, it's just almost destiny at times when somebody plays in the national 11 and others don't because they're just about as good. And it's a question of giving them enough games, enough confidence, enough responsibility, and they will respond because they're almost equally good. I really don't think there's any panic. There are many other very qualified, quality fast bowlers in India. They just need to find their time and their space, and perhaps some kind of I'm not calling it a rotation policy because we've just said the best should play, but there are levels and levels of cricket, and perhaps the others, the second line, even the third line, should get opportunities to just give them that confidence. They can replace the best, anytime.
There's been a lot of talk about spirit, specifically the spirit of cricket coming into this test, with Shubman Gill accusing England of going against it and suggesting they were guilty of time wasting at the end of day 3 at Lord's. We saw the scenes on the pitch there, lots of finger pointing, lots of words exchanged between the two sides as they restricted India to bowling only a single over at the end of that day. England, it was Zach Crawley, if you remember, the physio was called out at one stage as well. What do you make of those comments, and does Shubman Gill have a point?
Well, listen, I can't imagine any player in that situation belonging to any country saying, yeah, let's bat another over. I mean, everybody will try and delay. Why bat late in the evening in England if you can help it? You want to go back. So I think that's par for the course. Let's not be holier than thou. Any team would have done virtually the same thing. Maybe he took it to a minute or two more, and let's not forget that it could well have been genuine injuries. He got wrapped on those knuckles, fingers, wherever, quite visibly, and he had every right to seek a little bit of attention. But has he crossed a certain line? That's not for us, really. I'm sure there are match referee situations here, but I just think that's par for the course. Anybody would have done similar stuff, perhaps the Indians as well, if they had to face 2 or 3 overs and fading light in the UK. They'd rather not. Nikesh, just a quick observation, just my observations over the years. It's a generational thing. Say about 30 years ago, 25, and before that, the problems on field, the should we call it sledging or all the verbals and everything else, was not taken very well by the Indian team. And they were befuddled when off the field, say the Aussies or English or whoever else would say, hey, come on, join us for a drink or whatever else. And the Indians were like, what? I mean, you were so acrimonious on the field and you can't possibly be friendly now. But I think that's changed. And the modern Indian understands that what's on the field is on the field. And when you go off, you can't be friends. So I'm sure it isn't quite as bad as it looks on the field because they'll be all right because of the IPL and many other intersections that happen now in modern cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. A good point there. And a lot of the players do know each other pretty well off the field as well. But I think it's been played in a pretty good spirit so far this series. The cricket has been very good and exciting at times too. And hopefully that continues right to the end at the Oval. Meanwhile, India's women have added the one-day international series to their T20 triumph, which they won earlier on their white ball tour of England. India won the ODI decider by 13 runs at Chester Street, needing a women's ODI record 319 for victory. England gave it a good go. They were dismissed for 305 in the final over. Charu, India and their women's side getting stronger and stronger. This is a massive win away from home as this England tour has gone on. Now, how much confidence do you think this will give them ahead of the 50 over World Cup in October?
Enormous. I made a point earlier on Stumped that the conditions may be different because they're playing in England, and especially the T20s were obviously less relevant. But a victory in the ODI series, and that to a high-scoring win, 2 or 3 major things that have come good for India. One, Harmanpreet Kaur finally got a century. Finally got some runs under her belt because she was missing in action for many months now. That's very big for India, and for that to happen overseas. And of course, I've noticed that the fielding and the catching particularly, there were some spectacular catches taken by the Indians. Otherwise, I'm sure the English girls would have gotten that 319 or whatever. So those are all wonderful things to see. Of course, the grounds are so much more green and lush and easier to fall on. And I wonder if that'll happen in India during the World Cup. But I do think the Indian girls will believe a lot more. They've also had many other stars, not just the 2 or 3, not just Shefali at the top, not just Smriti, but many other girls have done very well. And for me, that augurs well for the balance of the team and an overall confidence. Not just the 2 or 3 will win us, but anybody can. So it's all looking pretty good for India. And it's about time, isn't it, having lost a few finals in the last 10 years or so, 8 years or so. Nikesh, I've got to ask you very quickly. Now, women's cricket has a big following in England, and these consecutive series losses to India, what kind of media has that generated? Are people actually disappointed? Are they paying it a lot of attention?
I think there has been a lot of attention, yeah. I mean, the start of the summer, they took on the West Indies, of course, a very weak-looking West Indies side, and maybe that gave a little bit of false hope to fans of the team. But look, at the end of the day, they've competed fairly well in some of the matches, in some of the moments, even in the final ODI. They gave that chase a really good go and just fell short at the end. It would have been a record had they got there. So there are some good signs for the England team at the moment. And the thing I'd say is there's no shame in losing to a really good side, and that is what India are turning into. I feel in this new generation, there's a fearlessness about them. They're led really well at the top by some of those senior players in charge. Harmanpreet Kaur, Smriti Mandhana stepping up to the plate on the tour as well. So no shame in losing to a very, very good side, which India certainly are at the moment.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on Akashvani.
Finally on Stumped, England will stage the next 3 editions of the World Test Championship finals in 2027, 2029 and 2031. All 3 WTC finals so far have been held in England, with South Africa beating Australia in this year's showpiece in June. The ICC said it awarded hosting rights to England and Wales Cricket Board following a successful track record in hosting recent finals. Charu, it had been reported that India were hoping to stage the next final in 2027. So how has this news gone down there?
Not well to begin with, but people are still sort of wondering whether this is a decision that's been taken 100% confirmed or whether it can still change, because stranger things have been known to happen. But the timing of the World Test Championship obviously suits the Northern Hemisphere. And India would be quite happy to host this because of just the kind of attention that cricket gets in India, and perhaps for commercial reasons as well. But I do think they've been very successfully held in England. And so a lot of people are possibly also of the opinion that, why shake down something that's worked so well? What's the Americanism here? Or why fix it when it ain't broke?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the way the reports have come out so far. England have done it so well. I mean, Jim, you were at Lord's for June's final. Whether it be Lord's or somewhere else, do you feel England or London in particular is the right venue for the occasion? I mean, it's been argued that it is because, whether it's India, whether it's Australia, South Africa, whoever makes the final, there are so many expats living in London that both teams would be really well supported in the final. What would you make of that?
We have to apply some logic here. I'd like to know how many people would turn up to the final of the World Test Championship if South Africa played New Zealand in Delhi. I tell you, a lot more would turn up to watch it at Lord's or the Oval, or even Sydney or Melbourne. So, no, I think in terms of The timing, the place. England's the place to do this, really is. You got most bases covered. And you can't argue with the three games we've had so far. We've got three results, perhaps not the results we were expecting on each occasion. No, I think England's definitely the place in the middle of the northern summer. The English fans, particularly on the smaller grounds there than Ahmedabad and MCG, they're going to fill the ground. So it is working well. Let's keep it going and until someone comes up with an equal or better idea for staging the final.
Well, obviously, it's got to be in the northern hemisphere. If it's in June
Yeah.
or thereabouts, can't be in the winter in the southern hemisphere. But I was thinking maybe it'd be a great thing for some other associate nation or a lesser nation to host just this one World Test Championship. What a big thing it'll be to promote cricket in that area, whether it's Singapore or Malaysia or even the Middle East and many other such nations that do play a fair amount of cricket. And then I sort of thought to myself, maybe not, because they're all currently being fed on T20 cricket. That's what's that's what's attracting the crowds and the spectators and everything else. And I can't think of any country in the northern hemisphere, and Jim, you mentioned New Delhi as well, perhaps even India, where people will attend a test match as a neutral without really having any stake or being a partisan fan, except England, where it's such a fabulous tradition and there's so much heritage and legacy of the game. So maybe it just has to stay there because of that. You could promote cricket in one of these other nations by having the World Test Championship, but under the risk of it not being well attended. And then that promotion would fall a little flat, wouldn't it?
That's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped on Akashvani. Don't forget, you can follow us on X. We are at BBC WS Sport, and use the hashtag BBC Stumped and check us out on YouTube too. Go to the BBC World Service YouTube channel. My thanks to Charu Sharma and Jim Maxwell, and to all of you for listening. Speak to you soon. Goodbye.
Stumped is a BBC Sport production for the BBC World Service in association with ABC and Akashvani.